Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the US Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our US Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. Today is Sunday, April 26th, 2026. Joining us is our panel of US Transhumanist Party officers, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer, and our Director of Community and Citizen Science and 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential Candidate, Daniel Tweed. So welcome to our officers, welcome to our viewers on YouTube. This is going to be a bit of an experiment because it is a collaborative creativity session. And the premise of this session is there's a lot that we can derive from generative AI models that can actually enhance our creativity rather than hamper it or supplant it or make us less creative, as many people these days allege. But I think the people who allege this have a very simplistic view of artificial intelligence and what it can do and its uses as a tool. And one of the works that is an inspiration for this session is a recent article by Tom Ross. Tom Ross was, of course, our 2024 US presidential nominee. And I would recommend this article. It's called From Instrumentalist to Conductor, AI as a Catalyst for Human Creative Orchestration. So the idea is, yes, with artificial intelligence, our role as human creators may evolve. It may look different from how it looked in the past, but that's not necessarily to say that AI would diminish the role of human creators. And I would like to share the AI-generated artworks that were prompted by Tom Ross's article, as well as some of my other creative endeavors. So first of all, for Tom Ross's article here, we see the cover image. And again, the title is From Instrumentalist to Conductor, AI as a Catalyst for Human Creative Orchestration. And you see now a human conductor and robotic musicians. So it's interesting that the human conductor is standing in the center of the orchestra rather than in front of it, as is usually the case. But I think you can see the point. So the idea is previously a human would have had to play each one of those instruments. And now a human is directing the robotic orchestra, but the human is still very much giving it instructions and coordinating all of the constituent elements of that performance. So it's still the vision of the human conductor, just aided by those tools. And I do think the importance of the vision of the human creator is often understated by those who lambast AI-generated or AI-assisted artworks. And I will give you a few examples. So back in 2008, I created 3D models of skyscrapers. And I did this using a program, free open source program called Google SketchUp. And SketchUp is still in existence, but it has since been sold to a company called Trimble and is primarily used for commercial applications, computer-aided design, and so forth. But there was a period of time when SketchUp was quite widely used by the public. And then one could export the SketchUp files into various 3D rendering programs. So I would create 3D rendered cityscapes. And I will show you a few versions of those cityscapes that I created back then based on models made in 2008 and using 3D render software, again, free open source software that existed in the early 2010s. So you can see the geometric shapes are fairly rudimentary, but for that time, these were high quality renders. This was about 15 years ago that these renders were created, again, based on models from 2008. And you can see I had a certain vision of a futuristic cityscape in these images. I was even able to put in this fountain with a geodesic dome cover and a human walking the streets. And recently, just earlier this year, I put these images into ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to transform them, to make them more representational and more detailed. And this is what ChatGPT came up with. So a bustling futuristic metropolis, you can still see a lot of the original architectural forms were preserved, but ChatGPT imparted more details upon them, added vehicles, added pedestrians, added some vegetation, added some other buildings. And here are a few other examples of the images as enhanced by ChatGPT. And these look like digital paintings now. So where is the creativity here? I would say there's still a huge contribution of human creative judgment and design in these images, but the AI was able to provide a greater level of detail, essentially flesh out the creative vision that I had and vary it a little bit, create some additional scenery, some additional glimpses from that futuristic city that I might not have fully assembled component by component, but nonetheless, the influence of the original creative vision is there. And this image, for instance, is in a different style. It's more of a drawing kind of style, but similar to how SketchUp works. And there are some buildings here that I didn't design and others that were inspired by the ones that I designed, but it's still consistent with the original aesthetic vision. So these are just some examples of how artificial intelligence can aid in creativity. Now, it's interesting too, Jason in our internal chat wants a survey of the audience. How many people have played the game Minecraft, where there is an in-game world and there are some basic components, blocks that you can build structures out of, but people have built really intricate structures in Minecraft. And I've done that myself. I could demonstrate some of those later on in this session. But if you've played Minecraft, say so in the YouTube chat. That might be interesting as well for us to consider, because there could even be Minecraft creations that could be transformed further using generative AI into something interesting. Now, I want to give a link to everyone in this session. Here it is, to a Google Drive folder that I specifically designated for this AI creativity session. It's been condensed using tinyURL. There's a longer link to it as well, but feel free to access that link and you will see various images that will be shared today. And you will also be able to upload images of your own that you create or you want to use as starting material for this session, but the idea is to make it collaborative. And the idea is to have your input, to try out various AI models and see what we can create with them. And the goal is to have a finished product or products that could be used for the Transhumanist Party or for advancing the ideas and messaging of transhumanism and the transhumanist movement. So if you would like to collaborate in this, feel free to use the Google Drive. Also put in your suggestions into the chat. I have some notions of what could be interesting to explore, but I'm also happy to take your ideas and see what we can do with them. Now, we have an interesting comment. Amy McClurnan writes, she's interested in this argument as an artist on the fence about AI. And yes, I think if we do this well, we can show you how AI can enhance human creativity and actually make your vision as an artist easier to implement. And it wouldn't really take anything away from anything else that you do as an artist. So just as computers didn't make printed books obsolete, and a lot of people still purchase and read printed books, I don't think AI art is going to make other artistic skills obsolete. Like Art Ramon, for instance, still paints by hand, and he uses a variety of media. He uses a variety of canvases and techniques. He has three-dimensional artworks as well, and he's spoken about this also, but he uses generative AI too. So the two do not detract from one another, and in some projects they can be complementary. Mike Lazine asks, wasn't Google SketchUp around during the same time when Google had Google Plus or whatever their failed social media site was? Yes, that was the same era. Google Plus came a little bit after Google SketchUp, but there was a time period when Google tried to integrate Google Plus into everything, including YouTube. And then abruptly, Google Plus was shut down around 2018, I believe. More life, please, John H. writes. Tall, skinny skyscrapers. It's like you anticipated the current New York City skyline. Super tall, super skinny skyscrapers all over the place now. It's interesting because the city of anti-death looked very futuristic back in 2008. But I visited Manhattan in 2024, and I did see some similar imagery to what is shown in this picture in particular. So it may be that the future is catching up with us, at least aesthetically, and this is not as radical of a vision anymore, though these are intended to be super tall skyscrapers with quite varied geometric forms. So I wanted to move away from the glass box that characterized a lot of 20th century architecture. So let us see what our viewers have stated here in terms of any ideas. So Amy McClurnan asks, how do people feel about intellectual property rights and training AI models on artists' work without permission? Well, I think it's a question of essentially whether the artist's work is directly copied or whether it's just inspiration. So when I go to a museum or when I see any artist's work, whether or not it's in the public domain, I may be inspired by it even subtly, even subconsciously, in the sense that if I go ahead and create something else, I may not even be explicitly conscious that this was one of the sources of the inspiration, but there may still be a connection there. And yet it's broadly recognized that that's not copyright infringement, as long as you're not directly copying and pasting, as long as there is still a distinctive contribution that you as a creator make. And the way the Supreme Court ruled on this, the US Supreme Court a few years ago, was that if you use something purely generated by an AI platform, that's not capable of being copyrighted. But then if you add something of your own to it, if you transform it in some way that is unique to you, then that work product could become your intellectual property. And then you could have some rights to it. You could have some ability to restrict others from using it if you wish. Though I do think a lot of great artistic collaborations and a lot of even better products than the originals result from an open source approach, from essentially designating a piece of art as Creative Commons licensed and allowing derivative works. And hopefully, in that case, there would be attribution, and attribution is one component of a Creative Commons license that could be built into the license. So if you want credit for it, that's an approach. But that's how you can essentially make sure that individual creators are recognized. So we have a comment from CM Stewart. As an experiment, I used Gemini as a writing partner for an unpublished novel. It provided a framework, but I filled in all the details. Overall, Gemini didn't write much. Yes, so there are different levels of involvement of AI systems as well. And you can use it to give you an outline or a structure, or put in certain elements that are more like busy work. Like, you have to have them in your story, but they're not the creative essence of your vision. It just helps you frame the story or frame whatever it is that you are doing. So, anyway, let us take a look at what we have in the folder. We do have an image that someone contributed, and we will go to it soon. Right now, I want to show you some AI artworks that were created by Zach Richardson, our director of publication, back in mid 2022. So this was summer of 2022, before DALL-E 2 even became widely used in public. And he was creating some transhumanist, futuristic cityscapes using a lot of orange. Orange is one of the colors of the US Transhumanist Party. Keep in mind, these images were made almost 4 years ago. Orange and black, of course, are the colors of the US Transhumanist Party. White is an accent color. And what you can see are some very interesting geometric forms. Some of them are rather approximate and irregular. It's more like a dreamscape than an actual representational cityscape that one could walk through, though those earlier AI systems did a better job at rendering the trees and other vegetation than rendering man-made elements. This was an observation of mine that I would say extended to about 2024, that the AI systems were better at actually replicating elements of the natural world than they were man-made structures. And why is that? You can see here the trees are pretty convincing. The mountains, they're a bit impressionistic, but they're pretty convincing. You know what you're looking at. And similarly to the clouds, the fog, they're believable. Whereas the buildings, you know they're not photorealistic. Why is that? It is because the processes for generating these natural elements in the real world, they're more akin to procedural generation. And if a tree has a branch sticking out in one place versus another, or if a rock has an edge in one place versus another, they're fairly irregular shapes from the standpoint of geometry. They do have rules and processes by which they're originated. But
Did we lose audio?
can you hear me, Daniel? Art Ramon seems to think that we're fine. But Art Ramon tell us otherwise. Yes. Okay. So you can see here the clouds, the rocks, the plants. This was back in 2022. They are plausible,
Testing. Do we have internet free?
whereas the buildings are, well, they have a bit of work left to do before a human observer would consider them to be plausible. So I was wondering if we could do something to transform them using more current AI systems and see what would happen. And right now I have 3 AI systems pulled up, including Grok, ChatGPT, and Night Cafe Studio. So I will see what I can do with each of these. And in the meantime, I'm seeing some uploads for the folder that hopefully will keep coming because we will use them later on. But I will see what I can do here with ChatGPT. I'm going to upload the file, one of the files on my end, and see what ChatGPT will come up with. And I think a lot of it, of course, depends on the prompt, but create a more detailed representational cityscape based on the reference image, paying attention to the details on the buildings and making sure that the details are realistic yet futuristic at the same time, with symmetry, order, and plausibility that these are architectural elements that future humans could construct. So I just made up a prompt and I'm going to put it into ChatGPT and see what it does while it's processing. I'll share the prompt with you as well in the chat. So create a more detailed representational cityscape based on the reference image, paying attention to the details on the buildings and making sure that the details are realistic yet futuristic at the same time, with symmetry, order, and plausibility that these are architectural elements that future humans could construct. Probably not the most concise prompt, but I think the AI system will be able to understand it. So I am going to see if I can share my screen and try to show you what ChatGPT comes up with. So it is going. But in the meantime, I'll also prompt to Grok and see what Grok can do. Okay, so we've got an image. It's a little bit low resolution here, but it's definitely improved it. It's definitely improved it. I will download it, and you can see for yourself whether you agree that this is an improvement. You can see it a bit here. I would say the windows have been made more detailed. There's light reflecting off of them. The geometric shapes, they're more plausibly made of metal or some other sleek futuristic material. So they're no longer just blotches of color as they used to be. I think this is a decent job by ChatGPT, and I will share this image in the folder soon. Meanwhile, I'll get Grok to do the same here. Yes, CM Stewart writes, that's an orange theme. And hopefully we can get images created by multiple AI models with the same prompts or similar prompts, or maybe the AI models could adjust the prompts for us as well. So there are some AI systems that can actually enhance a prompt based on human input, but then they add their own details based on what they infer the human user might be interested in. So I will now add the ChatGPT file, and we can see it shortly in greater resolution here. And in the meantime, Grok is working, and we'll take a look at what Grok is doing. It looks like Grok has finished as well, but we will show you the ChatGPT file. So this is in finer resolution. Hopefully you can see a lot more of the details. And again, compare this to the starting image here. So Art Ramon, what are some of your observations? How do you think ChatGPT did here?
No, I think they did a very good job at making it more realistic. Definitely. Yeah, the fog, the fog looks like it's up on a mountain somewhere where the clouds are, acting like fog. So yeah, it did a great job at reinterpreting that original image. I'm not sure what model he used when he first did that, but I think it wasn't anything that was available publicly.
No, it wasn't. He actually kind of kept it a secret for a while as to what model he was using, because he was thinking actually of making custom commissions of AI generated art at the time when that wasn't really done. What he was doing with these kinds of images was remarkable for that time period. Now Grok has finished. Here we have the Grok image, and it's a little bit different. So if you compare the original to the Grok, it looks like the Grok altered the lighting, made it a bit moodier, and added certain elements to the spheres, for instance. But it actually pretty much kept all of the original forms. It just filled in more details. So compare ChatGPT to Grok. Grok is closer to the original, but ChatGPT is much more fully fleshed out. What do you think about the Grok version, Art Ramon?
Definitely. It didn't try to fill in any gaps like ChatGPT does. So and that's one of the things I actually like about ChatGPT is that I'll be specifically vague so that I see what it fills in, how creative it is, and what it fills in the gaps with. So I kind of do that on purpose.
Yes, yes, indeed. And next, I'm going to use Night Cafe Studio. And with Night Cafe, it's interesting because it does allow one to upload images, but it also has something called prompt magic, which enhances the prompt itself and adds some details to it. But it's better not to use prompt magic with a reference image, as that could lead to some significant departures from the original intent, like it will create something completely different. but I will try to see what, oh, Night Cafe just finished. It's actually pretty good in my view. So, but it's a little bit different too. So we will upload the Night Cafe image shortly. And Night Cafe is not a single model. It's more of a suite of models. And there are tiers that one could sign up for. I use the free tier. I use it enough that sometimes I get credits for using the pro models as well. But this is one of the free models. It's called Flux 2 Klein 9B Fast. And it is a pretty fast model. You can see it generated this cityscape pretty quickly. Now, again, we compare it to the original, then ChatGPT, then Grok, and here's Night Cafe. What I observe is Night Cafe preserved the contours of the original image. It really altered the textures, the details of the buildings, and it added some more surfaces. It definitely added, let's say, some interesting aesthetics on the surfaces. Some of those are irregular, but maybe it perceived the architecture of the city as being such. They're irregular, but they're detailed. What do you think, Art Ramon?
I see reflectivity in the orbs there, especially the one on the left. You can see like a reflection of the building that's next to it. So that's impressive that it did that.
Yes, absolutely. I do think it's impressive in its own way. Now, I'll ask you for your favorite among these three. There's ChatGPT, there's Grok, and there's Night Cafe. And in the audience, if you want to indicate in the YouTube chat which one of these three do you favor, or do you even favor the original over any of them? This is the original here. Let us know, because that'll be a good indication of what you think of the capabilities of these models and which ones or which one we should use for the next demonstrations in this session. So, Art Ramon, what do you think in terms of your favorite?
First, I'm a fan of ChatGPT, but that could be a bit too much detail depending on what you're using the image for. Yeah, it's impressive, but it could be overworked. It depends how you're using the image. Some of the simpler, maybe the last one, might be better if you were using it, say, in a story line, like an image of a city, and that's a city. So that would be a little simpler, just as like a page of a book. Whereas the other one would be just a little busy for like a page of a book. Maybe as a standalone art piece, it would be fine, but not like one page or one image in a story. That's too much. If they're like a frame in a comic book style, that's way too much for a frame of a comic book.
Yeah, so you make a good point that the purpose to which the image is put will also affect which image one selects as the best one. For me, the ChatGPT image, this could be printed out in high resolution and framed as fine art. Whereas I agree, for an illustration in a storybook, something like the Night Cafe image would work better. Now, Kevin Bransaforti likes the Night Cafe version. Mike Lazine likes the ChatGPT version. Here it is again. And keep your feedback coming, because we will definitely have some more experiments. CM Stewart writes, ChatGPT gave me some great video thumbnails, but sometimes it just couldn't give me something usable no matter how many details I gave. And I noticed there are certain hangups that various AI models have, where there are particular prompts you give them, and they don't seem to respond. They don't seem to understand what you're actually trying to do. So with Night Cafe, for instance, I've generated buildings where the buildings were quite ornate and they had columns in front, but the columns were not evenly spaced on many of them. So it didn't really make logical sense from the standpoint of a human architect ever designing such a thing. So Night Cafe has this prompt to edit feature where you can tell it to change certain elements. And I would instruct Night Cafe to make the columns evenly spaced or make the columns symmetrical about the center of the building. And I don't think it understood what I was trying to tell it. So each system has certain limitations, but maybe the limitations of one system could overcome the limitations of others, and you could use them in conjunction. So we also have CM Stewart saying she likes the Grok version, and however, she says she won't use Grok given its history. And let's see, Daniel Tweed also says he would work for the Grok, he would vote for the Grok version too. He has dropped off because of computer issues, but he's still there in the YouTube chat, so thank you for sticking with us. And let's see about flying taxis and robocars. John H. says, I never use AI to create images. For me, it's all about getting information on whatever might enter my mind at a given time. Could be a question about politics or plumbing or philosophy or anything. So there are different uses of AI systems, of course, and some people use AI to search for information, to research it. Sometimes it's good to cross-check and corroborate what an AI system tells you, though. Now, others use it to generate art, music, videos, using a variety of platforms. And actually, what you choose to use it for or not to use it for, the degree to which you choose to use it, that's part of your creative decision. So you have a certain toolkit, you have certain results, certain ideas in mind, how you choose to implement them. That is a critical contribution to what the output turns out to be. So again, these are tools. You're not required to use them in any particular way. And you can also contribute your manual inputs and skills to those tools. And I would hypothesize that people who are really skilled at particular tasks will be less likely to use AI in those tasks. And they'll be more likely to use AI in areas where they don't have a lot of, let's say, manual skill or a lot of formal training. But in terms of flying taxi cabs and cop cars, we might have some images along those lines too eventually. But I want to check the folder. So we've got some interesting images that have been contributed, and I'm going to see if I can actually share my screen for the folder here, because I will ask the audience if you want to explore any of these in particular. So here it is. We have an image of San Francisco here, and that's an interesting one with flying cars. Seems like there's a bird there as well. Golden Gate Bridge, futuristic San Francisco. There are trams. There seems to be a train station that looks like a giant tram here off to the left, some billboards, some pedestrians walking around, some cars. There's a car on the tram track as well. So the tram track kind of blends into the Golden Gate Bridge here. It's an interesting image. What I would say for this particular one is, if there's a way to use AI to clean it up a bit, to make it a bit more logical, like have the tram track actually run in parallel to the bridge instead of merging onto it, and getting rid of the intermingling of car traffic and trams and pedestrians, that would improve the image. And I would also say some of the sky could be cleaned up. Like there are certain vehicles that seem vaguely like a blend of birds and hover cars. So maybe this particular AI system didn't quite recognize the difference between the two, or the way some of these systems work is they transform common elements, sometimes ever so slightly, sometimes to a significant extent, in order to create the variety in the images. So if you tell it a lot of things, like have there be a bunch of flying cars and birds and donuts in this picture, it might create for you some flying cars, some birds, and some donuts, but it might also create a flying car, bird, donut, a singular entity that blends elements of the three. Because what these systems are a bit limited in these days is common sense. So it might not be able to discern what is a plausible flying car and whether it might be wise to avoid any donut inclusions within the flying cars themselves. So other images, let's see what we have here for possible source images. This is Los Angeles. We see Hollywood. Very interesting that the Hollywood sign is quite, all the letters are correct. We see a lot of flying. I think this may have been the image that was referenced. Nice futuristic looking buildings, some billboards. The billboards seem to be in Asiatic languages, but I don't know if they represent actual characters within any Asiatic language. So if any of you speak, say, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, any language that's spoken in Asia, please chime in and tell us whether these characters represent anything realistic. Of course, one could construe them as some sort of futuristic language, but if I were to publish an image like this, I would want to make sure it doesn't inadvertently say something that I wouldn't want it to say, or that just would be ridiculous. So that's something interesting. This billboard is interesting too in terms of the image. It seems like some sort of augmented human, at least one of those, let's say, digital seeming images of an augmented human. Again, I'm not sure what the characters at the top or the characters on the side are meant to say. The characters on the bottom, I would say, would need to be edited. So I'm not sure what the middle letter is. First three letters are FAR, last two letters are EN. Is it Farsen? Is that the name of the company that's offering these augmentation services? So probably that could be to make it seem like a plausible name. Because I see this a lot in AI generated images where most of the letters are all right, but some of the letters kind of blend into one another or look off. And while I grant alphabets could evolve in the future as well, there could be new characters that come along, I would at least want that to be shown a bit more systematically with intentionality. So this is an area where AI art generation platforms actually have a way to go, generating text with precision and in a way that would be seen as meaningful to a variety of human viewers. But it's a good image in many respects. I think this is a good candidate for tweaking in interesting ways. So then let's see some other ones here. There's a cannon. I will try to open it up. But the cannon looks interesting. Okay, I think we probably, it's an interesting premise. We probably won't use it for obvious reasons. There's a Che Guevara Federal Reserve note with July 4th, 1776. Interestingly executed, not really transhumanist themed, and again the text is a bit off. So this note is legal tender. It's all distorted here, and that would take a while to correct. Likewise, I see underneath the autographs what's supposed to be Secretary of the Treasury is a bit distorted. Interestingly enough, this is 3013A. So, well, it's not necessarily plausible if you look at it closely, though the image of Che is well done. Again, it seems like the AI platform does better with images than text. The United States Federal Reserve seal is off. So that one would need work. And of course, Che was not a transhumanist or a person we would want to be promoting. So this is a recipe, Obelixian magic potion. Gemini and Claude helped produce this recipe label. Ingredients. Do not try this at home. I make no guarantees that this is actually consumable, but it's interesting that this seems to be phrased in a way that's not absurd seeming. So it provides instructions, and I have no way to say whether that's going to turn out to be edible, but if anyone wants to give feedback on it, let us know. But this did a good job with the text. That's what I can say. And there are no obvious errors in the text. It's presented in a step-by-step fashion. The ingredients all seem to be real. But of course, double check anything if you actually want to use this as a recipe. So another cannon here, and see what else others contributed. There's an image of a transhuman seeming being, again, one of those digital beings with a headset. And it seems like human hands. Human hands each have 5 fingers. That's good. And a kind of light exoskeleton above what's essentially this kind of framework. It's not really a fully fleshed out being, literally speaking. It's more like a digital being that has human appendages, human hands, human ears, and is wearing an exoskeleton of sorts. That's an interesting kind of hybrid digital physical being. We might be able to do something with it. The letters on the screen, the letters and numbers on the screen still seem a bit off. Like there's a number 5 that's kind of cut off here. And it's not clear what these numbers mean. So if I were to edit it, I would just get rid of them and stick with just the geometries here rather than trying to have it say anything specific. So that's my commentary on the images. And Daniel Tweed says, Sid Mead deserves high praise for being the visual futurist on Blade Runner 1982. Ron Cobb as well. It seems that a lot of their imagery inspires the AI generated artworks as well. So you could see some of the Blade Runner types of influences in AI generated artworks about futuristic settings. Now, also, I will share a few of these images since I use Night Cafe Studio for them. So this is an image of the city of Anti-Death as modified by Night Cafe Studio. And you can see the architectural forms have been changed a bit from the original, but they're still recognizable. A lot more of this neon type of influence as well. And then I decided to ask it to add a Carolingian structure to the city of Anti-Death. Quite a bit of a contrast here. But Night Cafe did a good job there. So I wanted a city that blended the futuristic and historical influences. And this is plausible, a kind of Carolingian mega palace, if you would, with these rounded towers and domes at the top. So well done. I think it fits into the cityscape. So anyway, where shall we proceed from here? I think the image of Los Angeles is a good one to work off of. We'll take a look at another one here because there's a human here. Support longevity research and live to see the stars. Oh, I like this one a lot. So we'll zoom into her here. So this is quite representational. Of course, the details on her face, her hands, everything here is plausible. Very intricate aesthetically. The helmet has all of these designs around it, again, all plausible. And the surroundings are plausible as well. So you have the bonsai tree, you have the columns with ornate detail work around them, you have the lanterns here, and you have the starry sky in the background. And there are also some intricate features on the staircase here. So with this image, I would say this one is ready to go. This one is just done. I don't see any way that it can be improved. The text is accurate and the message is excellent. So this one, I think, is just quite good as is. In terms of what we can work with, the Los Angeles image is the best candidate in my view. Kevin Bransaforti says he loved Frank Lloyd Wright's building in the first Blade Runner, and we will try to find that. Now, in terms of the recipe, Francois Joanneau says the recipe is consumable. It's his recipe, their label. So Gemini and Claude were used to create this recipe, but the recipe seemed to be capable of being consumed. Okay, so we will take Francois' word for it. And if anyone wants to try it, feel free. But we are going to, right now, work on the Los Angeles image. So I will download that one. I will put it into various models, and I will use a prompt with it that will try to address some of these issues that we have with it. I'll also upload it here into our session so that we can see it in greater resolution. So again, what do I think is good about this? There is a Blade Runner kind of influence to it with the cars, the boxy 1980s types of cars. The Hollywood sign is good. The buildings, the trees, the levitating platforms, all of that is quite good. I would say get rid of all of the neon characters that don't make sense. And that's my main issue, or that might not make sense. So I will see if ChatGPT, Grok, and Night Cafe understand a prompt along these lines. So I will say modify the billboards in this futuristic cityscape to remove all characters unless they are in the English language and refer to commonly known words. It may not be a prompt that the AI systems are good at recognizing. And I recognize that myself because it's more about meaning rather than about elements of the image. But nonetheless, I think it may be worthwhile to give that a try because it's probably the best way to achieve what we wanted to achieve. Because I do believe that image is a good one to use with a few more tweaks. And I'll add to the prompt that it's a futuristic cityscape of Los Angeles, so that the AI system knows that about it. So I've put this into Night Cafe, and I will also put this into Grok and ChatGPT. Now, my hope is that if I use the same sessions of Grok and ChatGPT, it won't blend the images that I'd created for the entire session. But we'll see what it does here. And I would say for a futuristic Los Angeles, unless an Asian country were to colonize the US, it would still make sense for the language to be English. But yes, each of the AI systems is working right now. And, oh, Night Cafe did not do a good job. It distorted the language even further. So I will just disqualify that image altogether. I may still show it as a kind of cautionary tale for what not to do. Okay, ChatGPT did something interesting. It's not perfect, but I'll show you what it did. It did a better job than Night Cafe. And then let's see what Grok is up to. Okay, I think probably Grok did the best job, but it might leave a little bit to be desired as well. So all three done. I will upload them and then we will comment on each of them. But what all of the three had in common was that they generally preserved everything else about the image. So we have the original image. Now let's show Night Cafe, which was an absolute failure in this case. So not only did it not have coherent text, but it even took what used to be coherent text on the Hollywood sign and replaced it with nonsense. So the only creative enhancement here was on this billboard where it introduced a different image, some view from across the waterfront. But I don't think Night Cafe improved this image at all. Now, let's do ChatGPT. So ChatGPT did a bit of a better job. It understood the instruction about transforming the characters into English. And what these say is, well, welcome, future, neon lights. But then the Hollywood sign was replaced with city lights. I'm not sure ChatGPT needed to do that. The Hollywood sign was fine as it was. I don't think in the future the people of Los Angeles will decide we've had enough of the Hollywood sign. We will replace it with a sign that says city lights. So not as plausible as I would like. And there is still that central pillar of a billboard that still has some characters that don't seem to make sense. And then Grok. So Grok followed the instructions. Grok followed the instructions to the letter. Hollywood sign is still there. And the other signs, well, they're plausible. Shop, explore more. That pillar-like billboard became Los Angeles. Live limitless. Welcome to Los Angeles. Elevate your world. Drive the future. They're all in a singular style. That's not necessarily how advertising in the future is going to look. But at least there's nothing obviously off about this. But Art Ramon, what are your thoughts about what the AI models did here?
If I were going to use this for some purpose, it would be easy to modify because you just select the blue and change it to a different color. I would see this as much easier to modify. I mean, the other ones, it would take more editing. So,
right.
If I'm throwing something
Right.
together as quickly as possible, this is definitely my choice.
Okay. Yes. So it's interesting too. Mike Lazine says he generated that image with Grok. So maybe Grok is more adept at editing images that were generated with Grok. That's my hypothesis here as to why Grok did a better job. But it's possible that Grok is more attuned to comprehension of text. At least it does seem like Grok has made advances in that direction, and it's not generated gibberish text in my experience nearly as much as other models. Still, I think this is a good one, a futuristic Los Angeles. At least this is an image that I would be happy to share in my virtual travel series that I post on social media every day, perhaps with a few further small tweaks, but I would say generally it's a good one. So now let's take a look at the folder, see if there's anything else here that we might be able to utilize. I would say this image here of let's say the hybrid digital organic being, if we can transform it to get rid of the text and numbers, it might be an interesting image in, let's say, a social media poster about the concept of the transhuman. Not that we're all going to be digital or part digital beings, or that we're going to be uploaded, but I think this kind of image has its place. So I will write a prompt to transform it, and I will say revise the virtual reality headset display to remove any letters or numbers, because everything else in that image I think is fine, at least from the standpoint of plausibility. And then I'll upload the image as usual to the 3 AI platforms and see what they do. Now, one thing we haven't done yet that I think may be interesting to do at some point is use multiple AI platforms in a stepwise fashion to create one particular finished product. Because some of them are good at certain elements and not so good at others. Like with Night Cafe, I don't have a lot of confidence in its ability to edit text. And I don't even have a whole lot of confidence in what it's going to do for this image. But we'll still give it a try. So let's see how they're doing here. It looks like ChatGPT is done. And based on the appearance of it, ChatGPT did a reasonable job. So I will upload the ChatGPT version and show that to you shortly. Looks like Grok is still working on it. And Night Cafe. Night Cafe. I am not sure what it's doing. There. Okay. Night Cafe is done. And it also followed the prompt. So I think Night Cafe might have exceeded my expectations here. But while Grok is still working on it, we'll show you ChatGPT and Night Cafe. So here's ChatGPT. Pretty good, I would say. So it removed all the text and numbers. And it left the geometric or quasi-geometric forms on there. And here's Night Cafe. Night Cafe just wiped the screen. And Night Cafe is good at doing that. So when I've used Night Cafe before, and I asked it to remove watermarks, for instance. So sometimes the AI generates a watermark on an image, even though it's not actually a copy of any artist's work. And this is a common misunderstanding. So some people, especially early on in the history of generative AI, were saying, oh, you see there's a watermark here, or there's some sort of signature of a painter. Doesn't that mean that the AI stole a particular painter's image? No, that's not what it means. The AI has just seen a lot of paintings with watermarks or the artist's signatures, and it made up a signature or a watermark that looked kind of sort of plausible, because in its training data, there are a lot of those kinds of elements. That doesn't mean it replicated a particular artist's signature or a particular watermark, but still, if you're generating art and you don't have a signature or a watermark attributable to you that looks like that, you don't necessarily want it to be in the image. So it's good to be able to edit it out. Now, Grok did a very interesting thing, and I will download that and show it to you as well. Grok took some creative liberties, let's say, but not necessarily in a bad way. I will show you what it did. So this is what Grok did. You can see now that virtual reality display pops out and it's held by the hands. So previously, the hands aren't holding anything in the Night Cafe image or the ChatGPT image or the original image. But now with Grok, the hands are kind of gripping the screen. So I'm curious, Art Ramon, what's your assessment of the three images? Do you like ChatGPT, which preserves the quasi-geometric imagery on the screen? Do you like Night Cafe, which just wiped it, so a very generic kind of response? Or do you like Grok, which created this display that pops out?
I kind of like the Grok. It creates more surface area to put something else on it, like if I were reusing this image. So
Yes.
I could put my own text under. So that just creates a bigger canvas. So, and if I was creating this image for a specific purpose, I'm trying to modify it in a way where I can add to it, and this would make it easier to add to it.
Okay. So yes, I think Grok is a better contender for being used in some sort of promotional imagery, I would say. So now let us see what else is in the folder here. And if anybody else has added any content to it. Oh, we do have this one here. Now, a lot of the other content of the cityscapes is mine. So this was done using Gemini and Claude. I'll zoom in a bit. It's a futuristic cityscape. I rather like it. So I think the sunset view, the sweeping panoramic vista here, the interestingly shaped fireworks in the sky, the shapes of the buildings are all quite well done. We have these essentially artificial outcroppings on the left-hand side, which are interesting. They're like these man-made, not islands because they're adjacent to the landmass, but they're man-made hills, essentially, that you could climb up and get a view of the ocean. So that's quite creative. In terms of the buildings, the ordinary buildings, the rectangular ones, the windows seem to be plausible in the sense that none of them are slanted or of irregular shapes. The three people here on the balcony look plausible. They have some transhuman enhancements, but I don't see 8 fingers or 3 arms or anything of that nature. It's interesting, there are some tree roots down here, which are an interesting premise. They seem to be upholding this roadway here. Now, this roadway It looks like a pedestrian path primarily. And I would say for a futuristic city like this, that's what it would be intended for. There are some vehicles on it which are a little odd looking. So they're not well-defined forms the way one would expect a vehicle to be. And why would they be on the same path as the pedestrians? That's a curious kind of choice by the AI. So what I would do with this is edit it to either remove those vehicles or change them to something like vendor stands so that they would essentially be more plausible installations along this path. Because if people are walking, they're going to be able to, say, purchase something from a vendor. So let's see if we can do that with this image. I will download it, put it into the AI models, and we will go from there. And again, the goal is going to be to essentially edit this just to make it a bit more plausible. But for the majority of it, I think it's usable as is. So we'll put in the following prompt: edit the vehicles on the paths to transform them into futuristic vendor booths. I will say, edit the vehicles on the paths in the attached image of a futuristic city to transform them into futuristic vendor booths. Hopefully the AIs will understand that. And then we'll put that into Grok. It seems like this is also a vision of a futuristic Los Angeles, according to the creator. So that is duly noted. It seems like Los Angeles does inspire a lot of futuristic visions and imagery. I think this goes back to the Blade Runner influence. And Los Angeles is a very dense urban metropolis. So I've uploaded them to Grok and Night Cafe. And now it's time to upload it into ChatGPT, and we'll see what it gives us. It may be that ChatGPT will run out of images that I can generate for free as well, because I have the free tier of ChatGPT, and that one will only give me a certain number of generations. I think, yes, for ChatGPT, it ran out of images. Grok gave me a result, but I am not pleased with it for reasons that you will understand when you see it. I will upload it shortly. And then Night Cafe. I'll show you Grok while Night Cafe is working. So it provided vendor booths, but it made them gigantic, like outsized relative to the pedestrians on the paths. So most of the pedestrians are tiny, and then there are a few giants. They all seem to be clones of one another approaching these vendor booths. And the vendor booths also seem to be clones of one another. And they even put one on the balcony, which is not what I had asked. So I am not particularly thrilled with the Grok image. Not particularly thrilled with the Night Cafe image either, which I will show you very shortly. Though the Night Cafe is a little bit more plausible. But if anybody else wants to prompt an AI model to just alter that one aspect of the image, feel free to do that. So here's the Night Cafe version. So the vendor booths are more realistic now. They're not as gigantic, but it didn't replace the vehicles. It added more vehicles. It removed most of the pedestrians from the image. So I am not pleased with either of the AI's implementations. And remember, I said Night Cafe is not good at rendering characters. Well, you can see there are some of these vague labels on top of the vendor booths, which don't seem to say much in particular, but one can see that these are essentially incoherent characters. So I wouldn't call either of those images an improvement over the original. Welcome back, Daniel.
Yeah,
I wonder,
testing audio. Okay, thanks.
yes, I wonder if we can just prompt the AI models a bit differently and just say, remove the vehicles on the paths of the attached image of a futuristic city, leaving only the pedestrians. Maybe I expected too much of the AI models when I wanted the vendor booths. Maybe they're not quite capable of putting them in accurately yet. But what if I just tell them to remove the vehicles? And sometimes that may be a good fallback option if you are struggling to get it to actually put in some additional element that you want, but your real issue is with some element that you don't want. Just ask it to remove that element, and that may be good enough. Because if the majority of an image is acceptable and there are just some obvious flaws that you want to get rid of, perhaps getting rid of them is the way to go. So let's see if Night Cafe can do. No, Night Cafe did not remove the vehicles. It changed the vehicles and it added more vehicles. So that's a bit disappointing. But then again, what if I use its own internal prompt to edit feature and tell it to remove the vehicles from the paths? Maybe it'll do a better job. Meanwhile, Grok is ready, but what Grok did was it removed the vendor booths from its altered image, leaving the giant people there, the giant people alongside the normally sized people. So that's probably not our best bet here either. But let's see if Night Cafe actually followed my instructions. It just cleared the paths. So I will share that particular image shortly, and you can let me know what you think of it, because that's probably the best image we're going to get. Let's see. Unless somebody else wants to pursue an entirely different approach here. But this is the night cafe image where I told it to just remove the vehicles. It removed the pedestrians, most of them as well, except in the distance, there are a few of these forms which are a bit vague. So you can't see quite whether those are pedestrians or vehicles or booths or what have you. So, Art Ramon, Daniel, thoughts on this version?
The lights on the road, it's hard to tell whether it's lighting or if it's like a blurred vehicles moving along it. It's a little hard to see. Was that drone show there before? Up in the sky?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
Oh, I didn't notice that then.
Yeah, so that was in the original.
It's funny it took out the vehicles, but not their headlight illuminations. I think that's kind of funny. It's like ghost vehicle headlights. Should be good grist for the paranormal mill. But yeah, this is a great idea to talk about AI art, generative art, because it's a huge topic. And I was actually hoping to add the concept of ikigai, which is something I brought up before. I don't know if I can share this diagram, but it's
Ikigai.
Japanese.
Yes.
Yeah, ikigai. Yeah, and you notice it ends with AI. So it's
yes.
Show
it again.
Yeah, it's a great idea because it. Wait a minute. Okay, let's do it this way. Yeah, so it's what you're good at, what the world values, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. So I would think it'd be great if we could revalue our art. In fact, our whole domain of human effort in this ikigai format, because when let's say you're in a public safety situation, then you don't really care about what what you love doing, which is one of the domains of ikigai, but what the world needs and what you're good at. That's what you need when things are going wrong and when the ship is sinking, right? We need all the people who can fix the hole in the ship to get to a certain place now, and because they're good at fixing the hole. So I just would like to open a discussion about the relation between art and AI and ikigai. So I think that would help maybe contextualize the discussion a little bit.
Yes. Well, the idea of this intersection of doing what you love, what you're good at, and what will help the world, if all those three elements are present, and let's highlight them again here. Yeah, what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for as well. Well, with AI systems are tools, and we have seen that those tools have capabilities and they have limitations as well. And the purpose that the creator has in mind is always paramount here. And without that, you can't really use those tools well or effectively. So that's something I think to consider. But what are your thoughts, Daniel?
Oh,
let's see.
Francois and I were talking earlier about the heat death of the universe, and if we're actually planning, to prevent or draw out the heat death of the universe as long as possible, I think AI would really respect us more because AI has probably seen the physics of reality and the universe, and we need to take the unstable stars and recombine them into stable, long-lasting stars. We need to make it so galaxies won't collide. We need to do all kinds of things for long-term safety. And I think AI would have an inherent respect for a life form or a consciousness form that was obsessed or involved in long-term safety questions. And I think that's what the Transhumanist Party could excel at. So that's my 2 cents. What are your thoughts?
Yes, indeed. Well, I don't really know if the heat death of the universe is actually in humanity's future, because I think that's a misinterpretation of the second law of thermodynamics. It presupposes that the universe is a closed system, but I've spoken on this before. I do think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us as a species, including preventing the eventual destruction of the Earth, or earlier than that, existential cataclysms that could wipe out humanity. So there is a worthwhile purpose in that regard, and AI, like other tools that we have, other technologies, should be harnessed toward it. Art Ramon, do you have any thoughts?
Just that, art fits into like storytelling, so that's something humans are good at. So both verbally and visually. So yeah, it's storytelling. So as long as you're telling a story, it's very useful art. So yeah, it's a tool of storytelling.
But is it art for art's sake, like the MGM logo says? I think it has to be more. Is there some morality that Hollywood can also have? Just other art for its own sake. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I do art for art's sake, but I also do it for telling a story. So, yeah. I mean, right now I'm sculpting a foot. It's to learn anatomy. That's why I'm sculpting a foot.
So maybe art for story's sake is the real.
Well, that's not really a story. That's more purpose. It's purposeful learning. That's why I'm sculpting the foot.
So could you say
not really so much? I was gonna turn it more into a narrative. I put a snake on top, but it broke. So now it's just a foot.
So art with a purpose is a story. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'd say it's the purpose of storytelling. So that's the main. That's what the cave people did art for. They were on the edge of survival, and there they are telling a story on cave walls. So
right. So it was art for story's sake, not just art for art's sake, perhaps.
Yeah, I think they call it Art Deco. It's just for art's sake.
Oh, really?
It's decorative art, just scrollies and paisleys and whatnot. I think that.
Well, Art Deco was a movement. It was a specific artistic and architectural style during the 1920s, 1930s, that era. So that's what it most commonly refers to. But yes, art for art's sake is a concept as well. So I actually was able to get Grok to do something fairly decent with this futuristic city image. Now that transformed it a bit, and I'm okay with the transformation. I think it can still work well. So this is the transformation. It just removed the pedestrians and the vendor booths and the vehicles from the path. That's probably the best we can do. So these 3 humans, they don't have the transhuman enhancements on them anymore. I did not ask Grok to take them away. That just happened in the course of transforming the image. But this was the previous night cafe image, and they still had some of the neon augmentations on them. But if you look at what Grok did, it changed the perspective a bit. It removed the parts with the tree roots, and previously those paths seemed more distant. It seemed like they were farther below. which was an interesting effect, and I still like that effect very much. Now, there were still some of these artifacts in the distance. What Grok did was it changed the perspective to make the path look like it was closer to this balcony, but then anything below it is covered up. And there are still some of these pulsating neon lights underneath it. But Art Ramon, Daniel, do you have a preference between these two? This is the modified Night Cafe version where there are perhaps some distant figures or entities on these paths versus the most recent Grok version, which simplified a lot of things away, but it also got rid of anything that might be absurd.
I would go with the Night Cafe version.
Okay.
Because it shows the roots. So the roots seems to be like bioengineered plant life. So you can turn trees into buildings. Because the buildings look like they're made of trees. So just bioengineered trees. So you kind of need the roots to sort of show that, or at least better show that the supports are bioengineered trees.
Yes. Yeah, I think to humanize an image like this, I would like to see permaculture edibles and dispersed camping opportunities, because I think we really need a greenway permaculture scale humane rights path around the world, which is kind of what Permatrail and Sequatoria are kind of doing. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like a good place to be on a bike or to be overnight camping. I would like to see some more opportunities for that.
Indeed. Well, so I think we've done some good work in terms of actually showing some of the possibilities and the limitations of these AI systems. So in terms of what has been created today, we have a few creations that I think are quite usable. So first of all, the transformation of one of Zach Richardson's cityscapes, this one. And we do have 3 varieties to choose from, essentially. All of them are at least decent. My favorite is the ChatGPT, but we also have the Night Cafe and the Grok versions. We have the Los Angeles of the future, and this seems to be the best version to at least work off of. As Art Ramon pointed out, some of these could be altered further, like different colors of the billboards, etc. But there's nothing absurd about it anymore. Then we have the transhuman image, and it seems like the Grok image is a bit more favored, but the other 2 could potentially be used as well. The ChatGPT and the Night Cafe version. Then we have the futuristic city with the glowing paths, for which, yes, I think the Night Cafe version, the latest one, is a decent one to use. And this quite beautiful image, support longevity research and live to see the stars, that's one that should definitely be spread. And this is, I would say, a kind of Art Nouveau influence. So late 19th, early 20th century, very well done. So
kind of like a Maxfield Parrish ethic with
yes,
the transcendental illumination, kind of factor.
indeed.
Yeah, I like that one. Who made that one?
Yes, I think. Let me see who made that one, if I can.
I want that as a birthday card for someone. Really, really artful.
Yes.
Really transhumanist.
Yes, I will get back to you as to the author of that image. In the meantime, I will share a few more AI generated cityscapes that have been previously created. So this one I had created using Night Cafe Studio. So essentially this ornate blue and gold futuristic cityscape, again with some neon elements for the bridges and above ground walkways, and you can see little glimpses of vehicular traffic. When you look from this height, you don't see specific vehicles, but you get these neon streaks of light. So I think this one turned out quite well. New York City was mentioned in the chat, and I had actually not intended to generate New York City, but I asked it for a futuristic transhumanist city with robots and flying cars. And I also mentioned ornate architecture, and it was mentioned in the chat that New York is one of the older cities in the US, so it has more of this historic architecture. And indeed, Night Cafe created a scene out of New York City, except it added the robots and flying cars, but you can see very clearly this is the Chrysler building, and there are other New York buildings as well in the background. So this image was used by the New York Transhumanist Party for its social media promotions. But I think there's a lot more that can be created, more skills that can be deployed. Jason points out in our private chat, we are amateurs and you haven't seen anything yet. So it's definitely possible to do more experimentation. Now, let us take a look at some of the audience comments. Now, Daniel, you asked, is there maximal truth seeking when it comes to art? That's an interesting question. Well, I would say with art, of course, the artist chooses what to depict. But in terms of truthfulness, does this show a plausible view of that object or of that scene? It's why I get frustrated when I see letters that are obviously unrealistic. It essentially breaks that experience of that scene as something coherent, something that's supposed to represent a particular artistic vision. But what were you getting at with that particular question?
Oh, well, yeah, I think the Ikagi or Ikigai idea of the four domains of life, and also maybe art should be story seeking. Just art by itself is not art till it becomes a narrative, till it has a context, till it has a vision of the future that's desirable. I mean, I hate that maybe like Blade Runner skewed all this transhumanist futurist stuff into this dystopian hyper urban look. I'd love to see more steampunk, solar punk fusions and permaculture. And how about flying bicycles? They'd probably be more fun than flying cars. But those cars could be robo taxis and people could be camping in them, so who knows? What are your thoughts?
Yes. Well, with flying bicycles, I mean, I could see some world in which they would exist, but one would have to be exceptionally careful on them for obvious reasons. A gust of wind could be fatal. There should
Well, that's
be
why you got to
some
keep them separate. You want to keep
some
the
protection.
bikes and the cars separated. Yeah, that's the problem. Is like keeping the 200-kilogram machines and the 2,000-kilogram machines from running each other down. It's kind of a one-sided battle. But yeah, I think I would encourage people to look up Edenicity, Kev Polk's vision for livable Eden-like cities that basically you have a lot of mixed use 3-story, 4-story high buildings that are solar panels and gardens on the roofs and sheltered bike paths in the street. I mean, it's a really beautiful series that he's put together at his website, edenicity.com. That's my vision of a future city. not starkness, but humaneness.
Edenicity.com. All right, so we will share that link with our audience, and they may feel free to check it out. So here it is, Edenicity.com.
He's a very
And-
intelligent guy. He used to be the, he went to school with Jeff Bezos, was an L5 guy, and then he said, "Wait a minute, we got to get life support right on the Earth before we do life support off the Earth." So I think he's made his. He wrote Stellarium, the program that does the star atlas in real time. Just a genius guy. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I really want to refer people to Kev Polk's Edenicity site as much as possible.
Yes.
When it comes to
well,
future
thank you.
cities.
Thank you for that recommendation. And again, please check out Edenicity.com. More Life, Please refers to flying motorcycles and Star Wars, but of course, there were skilled operators on those flying motorcycles. And let's see about other comments. More Life, Please writes, speaking of robots, he's been hearing about a substantial Ukrainian victory in which only robots attacked and overwhelmed a Russian position, even took prisoners. Wars of the future. Of course, U.S. Transhumanist Party does oppose fully autonomous weapons, so weapons that can be programmed to kill without any human intervention. It does seem, unfortunately, that governments are adopting that increasingly. Now, it would be fine if robots fought robots, but I would not want them to fight humans and make those life or death decisions.
Well, I have to point out that a lot of wars are resource wars, where one nation state wants to acquire the resources of a different location. And this is true probably of the Ukraine incursion that Russia's doing. But I think you can go back through history and see that one group wants the resources of another group. And again, we had that voyage into geoism, which would fix this problem of resource wars, because the things you didn't create would be a common treasury and there would be a common dividend available. But yeah, it's going to take a lot of policy jiggling to get to that point. Anyway,
Indeed.
Back to you.
Now, C.M. Stewart wrote, Grok left part of the freeway unfinished in one of the images. So let's take a look at that. So I think she was referring to this image here. And quite possibly on the right-hand side, there's a path, and that path kind of goes into a building, it seems. Now, how did Night Cafe handle it? Night Cafe doesn't have that. So that's another reason to prefer the Night Cafe version to the Grok version. Because in the Night Cafe version, that path on the right, it goes past the building, and you can see that. In the Grok version, it kind of collides with the building, and one could say, well, maybe there's a top-level parking garage there, but it takes a bit of a leap of imagination to conclude that. So that's another reason to prefer the Night Cafe version for this one. Thank you to C.M. Stewart for that particular comment. She also writes that the New York scene is very orange again. Transhuman orange. More Life, Please writes, no, we've got robots and flying cars now, don't the rest of you? So
I'm kind of curious,
amusing
how did that
comments.
orange and black color branding come about? Can you speak to the history of choosing that design
Yes.
ethic?
So Zoltan Istvan chose those colors for the U.S. Transhumanist Party. One major reason was no other political party in the United States had that color scheme. So obviously blue and red are taken. Yellow tends to be associated with the libertarians, though sometimes they've used purple as well. And then green, of course, is associated with the Green Party. And a lot of the other minor political parties haven't really developed distinctive color-based aesthetics. So usually what we see them do is some permutation of the American flag colors. Orange and black were not taken. And it was interesting because the way this particular image came about, I had completely different intentions for it. I wanted the buildings themselves to be orange and black. But what Night Cafe Studio did was essentially this stylized image where the sky, the background, was orange and the buildings looked black or gray by contrast. And white, as I've said, is an accent color that we use often for the Transhumanist Party. And you can see that it worked that in with the robots, for instance, or even some of the reflections off of this flying vehicle here. So it did a good job at...
the Pirate Party is kind of purple, black, and white branding. So just to throw that in the mix, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, with the Jolly Roger flag, that's black and white. But the pirate parties that I'm aware of haven't really used orange as a color. So even though there are allies, we do want to keep some distinctive branding for the USTP. Now let's see if we have more comments for the artworks. Mike Lazine,
by the way,
right? Night Cafe is a very naughty AI. Go ahead.
Oh, I had a friend in college who's now deceased, but Kevin Schweitzer had not just the greens, but the lavender greens, he called it. It was kind of a, a LGBTQ art movement in the Green Party. So lavender greens was a great color branding from back in the 80s. I don't know if it took off, but there it was.
Interesting. Yes, the lavender colors, a lot of the colors that are used in, say, pride flags, they have a certain association now, at least when used in combination. The rainbow flag, obviously, or the transgender flag. So there's symbolism in there. The key for the Transhumanist Party is we want distinctive symbolism. We want symbolism that people could look at and say, oh, these are USTP colors or USTP kind of theme, or at least transhumanist. Now, Luis asked, are only cityscapes allowed in the folder? No, not necessarily. We've had other contributions. It's just with the cityscapes, we can illustrate certain aspects a bit more clearly, like, are the buildings realistic? Are the vehicles realistic? We can essentially show where the AI systems do a good job and where they fall short. But as you've seen, other images have been included in the folder, and a few were quite good. Mike Lazine notes, LA is far less dense with people than New York City, and LA's public transportation system has gotten better with light rail, subways, and buses. The subways are cleaner than New York City's. So thank you for sharing that perspective. I have been to both, though, of course, I haven't resided there, and my experience is by no means comprehensive. All I can say is that they're different, and the way you navigate them is different. It's very difficult to have a car in New York City. I would rather walk everywhere. Whereas in LA, it's very difficult not to have a car. And I preferred taking the Waymo autonomous vehicles through the streets of LA.
Yeah, and another thought on the color back branding idea. I liked More Life Please's comment about art should be ultraviolet, only visible with special goggles as befits the futurist transhumanist, high frequency, high energy. And indeed, the entire electromagnetic spectrum is made of frequencies. Color is just a glimpse into a whole spectrum. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we've got the colors off the spectrum flag, which that's I think we should lay claim to that.
Indeed, indeed. And we'll highlight a few more comments here because Coruscant was mentioned. For Star Wars Coruscant, there are a lot of pedestrian walkways and utter chaos with repulsor lift vehicles flying in the skies. And of course, Coruscant is featured in the Transhuman Club. So please go over to the Transhuman Club website where Jason has done some interesting animations with Coruscant. And you can see an animation, for instance, where the Grim Reaper gets defeated by lightning strikes from the buildings. So, or high-powered energy weapons, I suppose. But Jason has created some great artworks and animations over the years, and of course you can see some of them in our futuristic neoclassical music concerts and on the Transhuman Club website. So now our time is approaching an end. I would say some of the commenters pointed out that there are other models that could be used. Gemini, for example. Claude could be used for prompting, though I'm not aware of Claude having image generation capabilities. Please correct me if that has been changed in the recent few years, but my understanding was Claude is text-based only. Luis Arroyo writes, why so many urban or city environments are we testing? Well, we're trying to also come up with visions for a transhumanist future, and cityscapes are part of that. That's not to say all transhumanists will live in cities, but how will cities of the future look when transformed by technology? That is, I think, an important question to ask, and also important for the public, for imagining the aesthetics of the future, because a lot of people don't really have the ability or the willingness to aspire toward a future that's kind of vague and indeterminate in their minds, a future that they can't see, that they can't imagine themselves being a part of. And that is one of the core purposes of art, to enable people to imagine futures that then they would have motivation to strive toward. And that's one reason why we emphasize art to the extent that we do in the Transhumanist Party, why we've had virtual enlightenment salons dedicated to art and music, sometimes combinations of the two. It is because we realize that only talking about the science or only talking about policy will not get us all the way to the future that we desire, because people need inspiration. People need a vision to work toward that has some more concrete representations. So that's why I think this was helpful. And Jason says, well said, brother, totally. And that the goal is to inspire. I hope that our viewers got some inspiration out of the session today. I think
Could
we
I
will
make one last
conclude it at the
comment before you
2-hour
conclude?
mark, but yes, Daniel,
Yeah,
please go ahead, and then Art
this
Ramon
is-
as well.
This is the 40th anniversary of the very dangerous Chernobyl meltdown 40 years ago. And ironically, it created one of the world's largest wildlife preserves where, radiation-eating fungi are proliferating, reindeer and wolves and all kinds of people. So it's an interesting kind of transhumanist intersection of art and nature unintentionally going on there. But yeah, 40 years since Chernobyl on this date. So back to you.
Indeed. And hopefully with the nuclear power plant technologies of the future, which are already available, are already being built in some places, those can be meltdown proof And it's important to recognize the Chernobyl meltdown was caused by human error, and then it was exacerbated by bad governance structures that didn't allow those errors to be addressed and rectified as quickly as they could have. So, Art Ramon, any closing remarks?
Just that I still run into a lot of artists who are anti-AI. Like, it's a bit of a losing battle taking that stance. But look at what I do with AI. Maybe it might encourage them to, not take such a stance against AI and use it creatively in areas that you're not necessarily doing art in now. I mean, movie making. I'm not a movie maker, but I'm using AI to make little movies, and did it with the children's book. I wasn't a graphic illustrator, and I used AI to do that. So definitely don't limit yourself just because AI is probably taking some digital artist jobs, but use it how you wish to tell your story. That's what I'm gonna do. Is I'm gonna make little mini movies. Once I get a good service, I can sort of translate my ideas into a nice narrative, video narrative. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And I concur fully, Art Ramon. I think the better attitude is not to resist AI. It's to try to incorporate it into one's work, and it doesn't take away from any other skills that one might have as an artist or any other tools, any other media that one works in. It's more of an addition rather than a replacement. And as Mike Lazine writes in our chat, AI is to enhance human creativity, not to replace it. I hope that this session has helped our audience to appreciate that, and that it was enjoyable to look at some artworks, to generate them collaboratively, and ultimately to work toward a future where we can all live long and prosper.